Hi friend, my name is Danielle Holleran and I am the host of the Detailed Diary podcast. I'm a self-made online business owner who loves sharing the behind the scenes of my business and inspiring others to follow their dreams. You can find me most days chasing my dog around, relaxing with my husband, and wearing basically anything Dusty Rose and Pearls. Think of this as your space to come to feel motivated and inspired to take on your biggest dreams, while also just chatting with your best friend. Cozy up for some girl time and get ready to feel uplifted and inspired. I'm so excited to announce that my very own podcasting platform, Zencastr, has become a new sponsor to the Detailed Diary podcast. You can check out my exclusive discount link in the show notes below this episode, and stay tuned to hear all about why I love using Zencastr for my podcast. Hello and welcome to the Detailed Diary podcast. My name is Danielle Holleran, and today I'm joined by a very special guest. I have Rachael Croxall on the podcast today of Blossom and Rhyme Designs. Thank you so much for coming on.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm super stoked.
I am so excited. I am absolutely in love with your business. I honestly wish your business was around 3 years ago or so when I got married, because it is truly just incredible. I can't wait to dive into everything that you do. If you just want to start off with a little brief background on yourself, where you're from, and kind of how you got started in the world of weddings in your business.
Absolutely. So I grew up in Arkansas until I was about 12 or 13 years old. And I also grew up watching my dad own his own business, run his own business. So I kind of got like firsthand views of like what that looks like. And I always kind of looked up to that and thought it was so cool. All my friends were always jealous, like, oh, your dad gets to work from home. Always thought that concept was so cool, like working for yourself. Anyways, we moved to Chattanooga, Tennessee when I was around 13 years old. And I went to a local college there later on in life, and I was in a woodworking art class, and my teacher was awesome. He was one of those teachers that was super laid back, super like just encouraging the creative that was inside of me rather than setting so many strict like boundaries. And I think that there's a place for that in college, like, you know, having a strict professor with some things. But he, you know, for a woodworking art class, it was so cool because he encouraged my like inner artist, I guess, if you will, like to come out. And we had a end of the year project, and honestly, like the only like thing about the project was he said, all I want you to do is use a medium that you've never worked with before, and I want you to make something. I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. Like, that's easy enough. I remember seeing, this was probably 4 years ago at the time now, 4 or 5 years ago. I remember seeing on Instagram the river resin tables going by like everywhere. I was like, that is so cool. And so my husband's in construction, and we constructed our first ever river resin table. We knew nothing about resin. It like overheated. It was fuming. Like we almost burnt the house down, but we made a table. And so, you know, it was a very messy, like first project, but it actually turned out looking beautiful. And honestly, like if you were to ask me back then, like if I would like to do that full time, I would have said yes. Like I working with resin, I loved working with tables, because even though the process was messy, it was so cool to see that end result, just like beautiful. And me looking at it, it's like, oh, I made that. Like, that's so cool. So I took a break from that for a while, and I went and worked at a wedding venue for about a year and a half until 2020 hit. And of course, that's when COVID hit, all that mess. I lost my job during that time. But while I was working at the wedding venue, I saw so many brides, so many like couples just tossing their flowers. And it made me sad because like, wow, like not only did they spend, you know, thousands plus dollars on wedding flowers, I mean, there's memories that are attached to those, you know, but just going beyond that. And then, you know, after losing my job, I really came to a crossroads where it's like, okay, do I go back to college or do I pursue this dream of mine? And that's when I kind of had the idea to start off with necklaces. So I started like custom necklaces with the wedding flowers in it, and it just developed into larger projects. So it kind of became a thing of, I love working with resin and I love the wedding industry, and I hate seeing these brides throwing away their flowers. And then that's how Blossom and Rhyme was born.
Wow, that's pretty incredible of a story. It's so crazy how things kind of just line up. I feel like the way that they're supposed to, like, you may not have ever even discovered resin if it wasn't for that class. And then you may not even have come up with the idea of doing the bouquets and everything like that if it wasn't for working at the wedding venue. So it's just crazy, like how every single step kind of just builds upon each other. Were you nervous kind of your first few projects working with clients' wedding flowers? I feel like that is just so intimidating.
It is. I'm so glad you asked that, because that was a anxiety of mine at the time. And to kind of go along with that anxious like mentality that kind of sometimes is that while I was pursuing that dream, I was posting content on TikTok, Instagram, and then things just started going viral like overnight. Like I got an account on Instagram reshared my post and it got like 20 million views. So not only was I getting a few wedding bouquets, every once in a while, I received like 500 emails in a day from people wanting me to send, wanting them to send me all of their wedding bouquets. So it's not just like one or two anymore. It's like 500, wedding bouquets. But I look at it as 500 like precious memories, like all in my hands. So, I think that the thing that helped me through that anxiety was a community of people around me. I had a lot of my friends reach out to me saying, hey, if you need help, I'm here for you. Like my family pitched in, we all sat down and responded to emails together just to get through that like hump of just viral videos. And then, just having people in your corner to say, hey, it's okay. If anyone can do this, you can do this. And like just having that was really important for me, because there was anxiety. And I think anxiety is good to some extent, because when it comes to that kind of thing, because it pushes you to make sure all of those details are perfect for the brides and the couple. I get a lot of memorial flowers. So I think some level of anxiety is healthy in a way, but when it starts getting stressful, I had that community around me, which was important.
Oh, I think that's so important. And I've never looked at it that way with the like anxiety that you were talking about, but it is so true, because obviously you have to keep it under control, but at a certain point you need to kind of feel that pressure in a way, because it just makes you that much more in tune to kind of seeing every little bit of the process that you're doing, trying to make it as perfect as possible. And it's a very fine line to walk, because obviously like we're human and we can't be like perfect all of the time. But I do think that a lot of owning your own business is mind over matter, especially with you mentioning like having a community of people who like support you and can help you, because at the end of the day, like we can get done busy days. Like if we have a surge in orders or like something crazy happens, like we can do it. Like a lot of times, like it'll take a lot of hard work, but we can do it. It's more so the mental stress and overwhelm of like, how am I going to do this? So having that community and people around you, I think is just so important. And I'm sure that that definitely helped as your business grew over the pandemic too, because that's like a whole other curveball in itself. I know that you basically started during the pandemic and it's grown so much since then. So how has that growth kind of looked for you over the past, I guess, almost 2 years now?
Yeah, so it's been crazy. I worked out of my parents' home at the time on their dining room counter. That's kind of how I got my start. And then I moved into a house with my husband, and then it was out of 2 bedrooms. And now I'm currently in a 1,000 square foot studio now, but we're about to move in to a space that will actually give us like 3,500 square foot of space, because we're tight. So, I I came to a point where I was working out of my home, and like I'm, I like things a certain way, especially with the pressure and like wanting all the details perfect. One of my biggest worries was hiring people on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was so nervous to do it because my business was like my baby, that's,
Mm-hmm.
my main thing in life right now. But once I started hiring people on, I realized, oh my gosh, there's so much freedom in that. And I really think the building blocks to, getting into this new studio that allowed us to, save up enough to get into a new space was having employees, because and hiring on, because I couldn't have gotten here by myself. Like, we can just be honest with each other and just like know that you cannot really have a business, and just depending on what type of business it is, especially with this, you can't just do everything yourself. There's no way. You're going to be spread so thin. So when I started hiring people on, that's when I really noticed the growth, because they started to do things and it freed me up to be able to focus on the design and the client and getting that just perfect for them, because I never wanted to like lessen that part of the business. I wanted to hire on in other areas so I can focus on that, if that makes sense. But yeah, over the past 2 years, there has been a lot of growth, but I think it's largely due to the part that I've, number one, I've been active on social media. I think that's a huge thing that we need to take advantage of now. And I think most people do, but I think it's very underestimated still, because that is literally free marketing. Literally just post on every single platform every single day. I mean, there's that, and then hiring people on are like the two things that I believe like propelled us just into growth.
Casting remotely can be so intimidating, but Zencastr has really allowed me to put all of my worries and challenges aside when it comes to podcast production with their all-in-one web-based solution. Zencastr is so easy to use, especially with guest interviews. I love how Zencastr uses local recording, and believe me, this comes in handy when I'm interviewing guests and have Luana barking on my line. I can easily edit my local recording without interfering with the guest audio. It is so clean and simple, and I also love how they have a secured cloud backup, so I know my audio is always safe. Zencastr seriously has everything covered with ease, with so many more incredible features. I want you to have the same easy experience as I do for all of my podcasting and content needs. So if you go to zencastr.com/pricing and enter promo code DETAILEDDIARY, you'll get 30% off your first 3 months. That's zencastr.com/pricing, promo code DETAILEDDIARY. That's a good perspective to keep in mind, especially for everyone who's listening. I know that I feel exactly how you felt too, where it's like, this is my business. Like, I don't want to let things go. Like, I'm still in the position where I could definitely hire more and like let go of more, but it's just so hard when you've been in control for so long of everything. But you can only grow to a certain level doing everything yourself, because there's only so much time in the day. And it's crazy how valuable time can be, which I don't really think that a lot of us like think about it that way, because it's like, oh my gosh, well, if I have to pay this person, like that's another expense, but our time is so valuable. Like it's not even a comparison. So it's really good and something to keep in mind. Definitely for anyone who's listening, who's maybe thinking about hiring. I loved hearing your perspective, how much it's helped you grow. Because I don't think I've really chatted with another small business owner who has, like hired out in the past and just talked about that. So I absolutely love that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think another thing, just to go off of how you were talking about how time is so important. I just got done talking with some of my employees. I was writing them little Christmas notes, and I put in the notes that like thank you so much for spending your time like with Blossom and Rhyme. Like that's huge that my employees are spending most of their day like working at Blossom and Rhyme. Like that means the world to me. And so then if you think of it from a client's perspective, it's like, you know, even if they don't buy anything and they're just like, they're a follower on Instagram or TikTok, they're taking the time to view your content. And that is so big. So I think one thing that I've been teaching some of my girls is that if they're taking the time to watch your content on social media, there needs to be something that they're getting from that in a way, and not just sales all the time. Mm-hmm. Sales can sometimes be bad marketing because it's just like you're just pushing it and pushing it. And I think if you can be more natural with it, like, hey, like for example, for our company, you know, some information we could give them is like, hey, instead of tossing your bouquet, get a replica one made or use an artificial one to toss. That way you don't toss the bouquet you're preserving. That way it can be in the best condition when you send it to us. Mm-hmm. And that's like really cool information to have, but it leads back to us and like the company. So I feel like, you know, if they're putting in time, if they're taking the time to view your content, you know, throw in some fun facts, like throw in some information that they can benefit from.
Mm-hmm. I think that that's so important and something definitely to think of that can go across all businesses. Mm-hmm. And I think we often overlook it because it's like, oh, this number, that number, you know, we kind of shrug it off as just whatever it is and are just focused on like the sales and what's transferring over to sales. But for your business, for example, like there could be someone following along who isn't even engaged yet and just genuinely loves your content and seeing the different types of videos that you post and just isn't in the position in her life to buy something right now. But 2 years from now, maybe she's engaged and married and loves your business, loves all the things that you share, and now is going to be a customer because you've been providing that content for the past 2 years and not pushing sales down, you know, her throat for the past 2 years, because she probably would have walked away. So I think that that's really a good kind of concept to think about, especially going into social media. There's so many things that we can share behind the scenes. And I know like I get tied up too in my head of like, well, should I post this because I need to like push this product or new, you know, thing that I have going on. And it's like this constant seesaw of like trying to show fun things, but also like need to sell, you know, there's no blueprint. Like it is.
Yeah, there isn't. And I think at the end of the day, people just want like raw people, even if it's just like, you know, even if it is a business, they want to see the behind the scenes and they want to see behind the camera. And like, just, I think that there's a place for like, hey, we're having a sale today. You know, I think there's a good balance between like sales, but also showing them you're a real human, being honest about your growth. I mean, if I like waited to post until the studio was perfect that I'm currently in, I would never post because it's never going to be perfect. So I think just being honest about your growth, like, hey, this is where we're at right now. This is the stage where there's boxes everywhere, but it's cool. We're getting there, you know?
Yeah, that's great. Now, I feel like your business is very sentimental, of course, and I'm sure that you probably get so many heartfelt and heart-wrenching emails and just there's a lot of emotion that goes into owning a business like the one you do. So do you have any kind of stories or just things that you've come across in your business that you're like, wow, this is pretty amazing?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I do to connect with my clients is I also write poetry. So I've always loved writing poetry. And so I actually combined, you know, my resin art love, my love for weddings and poetry, and made Blossom and Rhyme. So that's where the rhyme comes
I love that. Nice.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's fun. So what I do is I ask each client to send me like just a short paragraph of their love story. With our new website coming up, it'll actually be a form that they fill out, like just like telling us a little bit about their story. And I love reading through those, and I'll read through them, and then I'll either write a poem based on their love story myself, or I'll pull one. Like I have like basically an archive of like 20, 30 poems. And if it matches their story, I'll put it with it, you know? Because as you're growing as a company, there's no way to write a custom poem every order, but I still want to take the time, no matter how big we get, to read the stories and pick a poem that I've written that will go with their story. So, but along the line of stories, I've heard countless just like amazing love stories. Some of them are funny too. Like they met in a car and like they tripped over something and like bumped into each other. And it's just like, it honestly, like, it just reminds me of the good in the world, because I think just the past few years have been so dark and just depressing that it's like whenever I hear their stories, it just brings life back into me. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. But then also on the other hand, I also get a lot of memorials and funerals. So there are a lot of like heavy things that come with those flowers. So like one story I had a few months ago, her son had tragically died in a car accident, and she sent flowers from his funeral, and it's like that almost holds even more weight than a wedding, because it's, oh my goodness, these flowers were like the last thing of this person that they loved. And so I am, especially with memorials, I'm extra careful, like, with the poem, and just being super respectful to them, and like asking, if there's anything they need, because it's a way to be a light to that person's life too. They're going through something, that they're going through something traumatic. So just the fact that they would trust you with something so special just kind of grounds me again. And it's, even though it's a sad situation, I feel honored, and it grounds me and makes me thankful for so yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that's a lot to take in, and that's really incredible that you can take a purchase from a customer and turn it into like this full experience. Like I'm sure when that customer purchases from you and reaches out, they're not expecting to, send in their full story, have you read it, actually look through it and take it in, choose a poem that you've written for them, like, and match it to them. Like that much must make their day. And I'm sure even with the memorial clients that you have too, like they must just appreciate that so much. And that is really, really incredible. Wow.
Thank you. Yeah. We'll put like the poem next to like the piece that they display, just because it does, like, especially if it does match their story so well, or it's a custom poem. So that means a lot to me too, that they would appreciate it that much. So it's an honor. It really is an honor.
Oh, that is so sweet. I absolutely love that. So kind of looking towards the future, I know that I ask a lot of my guests this, and it's always just so difficult to answer, but where do you kind of see your business going in the future? If you have any big goals, or maybe in the next, I don't know, 5 years. I know it's so hard to say, but what are you kind of thinking for the future?
I mean, the future, there's endless possibilities that it really is. And so I honestly, we're thinking big. We're thinking, like, right now, just to give you an example, we're shipping out around 40 orders every 2 weeks. But our goal for next year, 2022, is to be able to ship out 100 orders every 2 weeks.
Wow.
And so on and so forth. So by 5 years, we could be doing 300, 400 every 2 weeks. And, there's a demand for it. So I don't, I don't see that being a too large of a goal at all. So I see us hiring, I could even see us with 20 plus employees, like cranking these orders out by, but also taking into account that we need to, read their stories and still add that personal touch to it. So basically just like growing the company to a larger corporation type feel, but still having that small business touch to it, if that makes because there's no way to ever completely just like manufacture this kind of stuff. There's no way to mass produce it because it is such a tedious, even scientific process with the resin and then writing the poems. There's no way to manufacture this in large quantities without, a lot of employees and stuff. So I like that. I like that it keeps that small business touch to it. So there's a lot of big goals that we have coming up here in the future. And, but I also want to keep that feel of that handwritten note and that, because it is such a personalized, custom, special experience.
That's great, which you definitely will. I feel like when you start your own business, even as it grows, you don't want to lose that special component of it. So as long as you're there and you're running the show, there's always going to be that special piece of it that carries throughout the business. But I can totally see you growing to like leaps and bounds where you are now. I'm very excited for you.
I'm so excited for the future.
Oh, well, at the end of every episode, we have like a little figurative detailed diary that we write in, basically just a last note of inspiration to the listener. If you have any last words that you want to say.
Absolutely. So I would say if I could pick one thing, it would have to do with social media and advertising and marketing, because that's where my heart really lies, is with people. And I think that if you take the word social media, a lot of times we forget about the social part and we just focus on the media part. And at the end of the day, people want real people and just to be yourself and not to focus on, I think there's a place for making everything look nice and marketed and professional, but also people love the raw and the uncut and just the, just like you and I are doing right now, like just having a conversation and being real people. And I think, just remembering that social media is social and just to be yourself and don't get things too edited, just put out your content and do your best. And that's all you can do.
That's great. I think that's an important concept that everyone can take away and try to apply back to their own small business. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I know it's a very busy time of year, but I really appreciate it. This has been such a wonderful interview, and I can't wait to just continue following along with your business.
Yes, of course. Thank you for having me. This has been so fun.
Of course, anytime. Thank you so much to Zencastr for sponsoring the Detailed Diary podcast. Zencastr has made my podcast production process so much simpler with their all-in-one production suite. This episode was made on Zencastr, and if you like what you hear, be sure to use my promo code to start podcasting for free today. If you go to zencastr.com/pricing and enter promo code Detailed Diary, you'll get 30% off your first 3 months. That's zencastr.com/pricing, promo code Detailed Diary. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Detailed Diary podcast. Make sure to rate and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Be sure to join our community over on Instagram at Detailed Diary Podcast and introduce yourself. I'm looking forward to meeting you over there, and I will see you next Wednesday.